Okay, so final boss battle, the most difficult part. I noticed that I had my reference material over here when editing the video, and then I stuck my stupid face over the top of it in the edit. So apologies for that. Hopefully it didn't make it too hard to follow along. Also, I definitely need to get a better webcam for filming these videos. So for some reason it made me look like I was in a nuclear explosion at some points during the last video. Again, hopefully not too many problems, but we're going to finish off this model now with a couple of easy bits to start with, and then the part I've been putting off. So firstly, I just want to tighten up this section here, and we can put that loop cut through there without affecting anything, because we've got flat edges there. I'm also just going to sharpen it up with another loop cut there, so we've got a nice tight sharp edge there. Looks really nice. And we're also just going to put in this section here. So we're going to make a loop cut along the bottom and bevel it. Here on, I'm going to take these faces and inset. I don't want to inset like that. I just think I've got a missing face there. Yeah. I just turn off subdivisions so I can see it. Also, just going to turn on my screen keys. Don't know how much they help, but there you go. We're going to inset and then extrude along the Z, extrude again. And then just going to delete those faces. And if I turn on subdivision, we're looking a little bit round here. So we're just going to put a loop cut here and bevel. Tighten that up. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Loop cut and bevel. And again, we're on these flat edges, so nothing to worry about there. Okay. So how are we going to tackle this circle? The problem we've got is I couldn't put the circle in to start with because I didn't have the curve geometry to follow. Now, there would have been a way around this, and I probably should have planned ahead a bit more, but it gives us an interesting problem to try and solve. So I'm just going to duplicate this one just in case. We're just going to rename this backup mesh, and we'll just get rid of this one we don't need. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this face and put my 3D cursor there. I'm going to make a circle. I think for this I'm going to need 12 sides because of the amount of edges I've already got. I might be wrong about this and it might cause me some headaches, but we have to commit to a number at some point. So I'm going to pull this forward. I'm going to get this in the position that we want. So maybe something like this. I'm going to match my reference exactly because, you know, so it doesn't matter. Okay, and then we're going to get to the side view. We're going to turn on X-ray mode, pull these back, and you're going to see the first problem that we've got. So if I pull these back to the surface, generally we've got a pretty good fit, but we've got some problems here for sure. Okay, so now I'm going to turn off X-ray mode and go to the side view. I think I'm going to turn off subdivisions for now. And I just want to give myself a bit of space to work with that's going to help me line up everything. So I need to turn off a backup mesh, that's what's causing these issues. So let's select from here to here and then just slide these over. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So there's a bit of a rule of thumb. If you've got a diagonal angle on a flat surface, it doesn't cause any issues. If you've got it on a curved surface, it's going to cause some pinching. So we're fine to slide like that, but it might cause some problems if we need to do it across an area like that. So just we're going to bear that in mind. We're just going to push this over to here. And we're just going to take these edges here. We're just going to very slightly slide them down, and we should be able to do that without ruining our geometry too much. So we've got points here that will match up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split my window, and I always struggle with this because Blender's confusing at this. So if I, nope, I knew I was going to get it wrong. Is it this corner? I can't actually see it. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to split the window. I'm going to move my reference down here for now. And I'm going to set this window to this side view because I want to see when I add in extra edges if they cause any problems. Okay, so we've got this in place. Let's combine both of our meshes. So we're going to select circle, and then we're going to select this face. You can see it's applied to subdivision. So now I want to put a loop cut in here, and you can see on both screens. Okay, so that's going on a flat edge, so it's not causing any issues. I'm going to put it just there. And then we're just going to turn our subdivision so we can see, because I think there is an edge here. So let's see what happens if I pick up this whole edge and slide it up slightly. So you can see the curve is changing shape, which is not ideal, but we can then pull the curve back again. And in doing so, we're going to need to pick up our circle and move this back as well. And you just want to make sure you've got X-frame. Okay, so we're getting something a bit cleaner now. So the next thing I want to do is I'm just going to delete these faces. And I'm then going to put a loop cut. Now, we've got some issues because I've inexplicably made this odd triangle that I didn't need to make. So we're going to fix that at the same time. So I'm just going to put this cut in here. I'll then connect like that. And then I'm going to dissolve this edge. So now I've actually got quads everywhere. And I should stagger this a little bit, but I think that's going to be okay for what we want. We're just going to, yeah, no weird bumps at the moment. So we've got a point here. We can actually just connect these two together. So let's just merge the center. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put a cut in, and we're going to terminate on this flat edge here. So it's going to make an end on here, but again, because it's on a flat surface, you're not seeing any issues. If you turn on smoothing, we're all good. Okay, so we can now join these two together. And now I want to start making some quads. So I could put an edge in here. And again, just keep an eye on both screens. And if I move it up, it doesn't change the shape, so we're fine. And we can just connect that up. Anything I do at this end, I need to do at the other end as well. Again, we're going to assume that doing that isn't going to cause any issues. And as we go, we're just going to keep looking for any kind of stretching or pinching. Okay, so we've got this edge and this edge will now join nicely together. So if we merge at last, and then this one, I just need to be a bit careful because I haven't actually made enough space. So I think that's in position. We're just going to check. Obviously our circle's looking a bit odd at the moment, but so we've got a quad here now, and we've got a quad here. So that's the top half of the circle done. That's the easy bit. And we're just going to turn our subdivision, and we're going to have a look here. So we've also got a quad here if we connect these up. So I'm going to hold down, double tap the G key, and then push the Alt key and move this over to here. I'll just go a little bit closer, and let's connect this one together. And then we're going to join these together. Again, it's pretty smooth. It's looking a bit odd because of this section, but this is going to be our biggest challenge, is this last part. So we're going to do the same trick here. Slide this over, and then just connect this last one, and join our faces together. Okay, so far so good. So what can I do here? Because I want to connect up. I don't have any geometry in the circle. So this is not my preferred way of doing it, because it makes our circle uneven. But I think if we do this and do the same here. So I'm going to subdivide here. So we've got a nice quad, and if we look at that, that's actually not too bad, but it's not a perfect circle now. And we're just going to move this slightly over to just try and reform. And yeah, it's not a perfect solution, but because the circle is so scooped, you can't really tell. So what we're going to do now is we're going to select all the way around. Sorry, my keyboard is way too small. I keep hitting the wrong key. I'm also just going to turn on face orientation and make sure we don't have any flipped faces. We're looking good. So we're going to extrude and scale, just make an edge there, and then we're going to extrude and scale in, extrude and scale again, and we're just going to push it back. And now if we turn on our subdivision surface, that is looking pretty good. So after I finished recording the video, I noticed that I'd made a silly mistake, and there was a slight crease in their geometry, and that was because I didn't merge these vertices together. There's no reason to have this shaping at all. So I'm just going to GG and slide this over, and then we're just going to see if we get any closer, and then we're just going to merge at the centre, and that crease goes now, and we've got a nice bit of geometry there. And likewise, let's see if we can get away with this without too much drama. And there we go. So now we have a nice smooth yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so let's call that done and move on to some fun stuff. There's going to be a brief moment where I try and remember how on earth you merge these screens together like that. There we go. It's almost like I know what it is sometimes. Okay, so the next thing is how are we going to do the texture? Well, firstly, I'm just going to save it. I hope you've got a better name than weird shape. Yeah, hopefully you're more creative than me in that respect. So let's create a simple scene to start with. So we're going to need a camera. You might already have one if you didn't delete everything at the start. And then we're going to click this button to switch the view, and then I'm going to switch to camera to view. And then I'm going to position it. And we might as well just try and recreate this scene. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to position something like this. Okay, and we're just going to come out of camera mode. I'm going to go select this face and this face. And we're going to rotate. Are we going to rotate? We should be using the mirror, shouldn't we? The mirror. And then up. Oh dear. Why is that not going the way I think it's going to go? So it's still not right. It's funny how I can cut a circle into an object with good geometry, but I can't just position one object on top of the other correctly. I'm just checking, see if there's any weird pinching. There's a little bit of a pinch there actually. Is that anything we need to worry about? Don't think so. I think when we've textured and like, it's always just worth checking see if there's anything crazy going on. We could do just to fix this is we could just see if pulling this slightly, it's possible that this is not lined up with this one so well. So select that to active element. Yeah, I think that's helped a bit. Okay, let's not worry too much about this because you can send yourself insane. And it's never going to be perfect. And so we're kind of something like that. And then let's turn off camera to view. And we'll make a plane behind. Rotate that 20 degrees. And obviously my face is the wrong way around now. So. Okay. And then I'm going to switch to cycles. Turn on my GPU compute and turn off face orientation. We've got this beautiful looking scene. It's so nice. Just I'll push that plane away a bit. So let's put in a skylight. It's not a skylight, an area light. So light, area, Let's pull that away. And this one lights so tricky to rotate. And let's have a look at it from above. Actually, maybe I want it to light from the front like that. And then we're going to make this like 1500 watts. There we go. And maybe we want to, let's increase the size of it. And I'm just going to play around with the placement a little bit. Don't like how large that shadow is, so I'm going to try pushing it back. Okay, I think that's going to do. So we'll make a new material for the plane. And that'll be a bit of grey. We might need to boost our light a bit more. I'm also just going to take our environment colour and turn up quite a bit. How hard can it be to get grey, eh? Okay, and then we're going to... We're just going to turn this area light down a little bit. Okay, so how are we going to do the gradient? So the easiest way to do this is to make a new material, and then we go to the shading view, and I like to work on the same settings. So let's call this, let's give it a name. So hopefully there is a gradient already built into Blender. So if you go to gradient texture, and then we're going to want to use a color ramp. So it's literally just going from one point to another. So for that to be any use, we want to be able to control the colors. So we'll, I don't think it makes any difference if you use the factor. Okay, so at the moment we have a gradient and we can change it around using the sliders, but I want to control the direction. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to add in a mapping vector, and then we're also going to add in an object texture coordinate, like so. So now if we rotate on the x-axis, I think, no? It's always the last one they try, yeah, the y-axis. Okay, so we want to set this to 90, and then we're going to have to change the scale a bit, because I find it very hard to get like a fine, smooth gradient using the default setting. So let's try this at 0.1, and then if we adjust our location, and it's on the X for some reason. Okay, so we can kind of play around with, let's try bringing in some of the colours. So it's going to be a bit tweaking here, but so we're starting with a grey and we're finishing with a kind of orangey red. Something like that. And let's pull this down so you can see as I move it down, it affects the gradient position. So is that too orange? Is there too much red in that? Maybe something like this. And then we can add another point in here, and we could make this the pink, the kind of peachy pink colour. Something like that. Again, we might need to move this over. And then we kind of got red somewhere in the middle here, and we look at something like this. I don't think we're too far off. I think this grey is too dark. So not perfect, but close enough to give you an idea. And we should then be able to apply this material to both objects. And it looks like this gradient's actually different, so we're going to duplicate this, and we can then change the value. So it kind of looks like you're just removing these ones from here. Something closer to that. This is all your artistic decisions at this point. And let's make it a much shinier material. So I'll turn our roughness down. And we might want to play with how our lighting hits that object. Go to our layout view and have a look from the top. So maybe we want something more like this. I think I got confused about where my camera is. No, I was right before. So let's have it hitting the front and then bring it down. And if we just change the shape of the beam. Do we want, maybe we want to make this a metallic object? I don't think so. I think that's going to look like that. So let's keep it as we were. We're just going to drop the roughness down on both of these. Okay, cool. And then the last bit of texturing work we might want to do is to kind of bring in these details here. So this is an easy UV job. So if we go what we want to do is basically select all of the front. So the easiest way to do that is go to overhead view, turn on X-ray mode, and that should be everything selected. And then if we go to UV editing, UV angle based, so that's going to give us one panel, so we're going to move that to the side. And then we're going to do the same thing this one. So we want to pick up the back face. And that's going to be more tricky. Okay, let's do it because we can't, it's on a curve. Sometimes my brain just doesn't work as well as it needs to. So we're going to Control Shift and just kind of work our way down. Let's turn off subdivision surfaces as well. So you need to make sure we've got all of these selected. We don't want to select inside the circle, inside the inset, because we're not going to use that part. Wouldn't be the end of the world if you did. Cool. That isn't working the way I want it to work. Handy thing with Blender, if you accidentally deselect an area, you can just undo. Okay, nearly there. So we're going to go back to UV editing and we're going to do UV angle base. Here, move this over here, and then if we select everything, so let's position this one here. I'm going to rotate this one to 90 degrees. So now we're going to export our UV layout. And I'm just going to set this to 4096, which might be way too big, but I like to work at as high res as I can. And then if we go into Photoshop, or whatever image editing software you're using, here's our UV map. And I'm just going to see if the textures that I've already made will line up. Yeah, pretty nice. So I've already made a texture sheet, just things that I found from Pinterest. And obviously if you're using this for commercial purposes, you need to create your own artwork, but for this demo I've borrowed from some more talented artists than me. So now if I save this out, I want it to be black and white image. We can keep it the Photoshop file. I'm going to call this weird shape decal mode. Okay, and if we now go back into our shading editor, and we're going to create a mix shader node. And we're going to create another principal BSDF. I can never say that the right way around. And then we're going to use an image texture that we just made as the mask. So if we load up, oh, I forgot to hit save. I always do that in Photoshop. Forget to say a sneaky extra box. And then we're going to use decal map. Connect color to the factor. And now we can play around with the finish on this. And cool. Have I got my, yeah, so I have my supervision surface turned off. And what we should be able to do now is if we select this one and this one and go back to our original one, and we should be able to Control L, copy UV maps, and then if we go back in here, we want to pick up this entire node tree because we've made a separate material for here for a different gradient, which is an inefficient way of doing things. There's definitely a better solution, but that's where we've landed on. And now that's got the other part of our decal. Decal? Let's, for the sake of completion, fill in the other parts of this edge. So we've got a cylinder here, and this is like a panel in there, so these should all be pretty straightforward to do now. So let's go in, I will isolate this object again. So we're going to select, I'll select this edge loop here, Shift D, and then P to separate into a separate item. And then you can just go into solo mode to work on this. So the first thing we want to do is select everything, hit the full stop key and make sure we've got bounding box center, and then extrude and scale. I can see that we've got some flipped faces. I'm going to turn on face orientation again. I'm going to select everything and then Alt N, recalculate outside, and that should fix that issue. And then we're going to select, let's put an edge all the way through with the F key, and then it's a case of putting in our vertex to make quads. Probably don't need to do this, but let's make it neat. Let's put proper geometry in. So if you ever want to know how to close off a shape like this, this is how you do it. I like that though. And then it just leaves with a quad in the centre. Boom. And then we can extrude an edge here. It's like I extruded that evenly. To try again. There you go. I'm going to just put bevel on this edge. So I think my bevel's not even. Let's apply the scale and then try again. We'll just turn on shade, also smooth. Just going to turn off this plane in edit mode because it doesn't help us one bit. And then maybe we won't push that back, maybe not, I don't know. And then this is just a cylinder. You know how to make a cylinder, but apparently I don't. Let's just work on the side so you can see it. We're going to scale it out, and we might want to make it more interesting. I don't know. Why leave anything stock? So let's just put a couple of loop cuts in, and again extrude along normals, just to make something slightly more interesting. Let's put our subdivisional surface on. So then we're going to need to put an edge here, put an edge here. One in the centre, and then to avoid this problem, we're going to just do an insert there. Let's smooth that way. Let's see what we want that to sit. It's way too big. Something like that, maybe. Can't really decide how I want that to sit. I quite like seeing a bit of that detail, so I'm just going to push that back a little bit. Okay, maybe it looks a bit weird, I don't know. This is where your artistic judgment comes in. So the last thing to do is these little pipes that go through. Again, it should be very easy to put into place. I know we didn't cut this hole out. It would have been the same process, but I just couldn't face making this video another 2 hours long. So we're going to select that edge and then Shift S, cursor to selected. And we're just going to make a circle, and we can keep this really low res. I'm going to rotate it through 90 degrees, scale it down. And then going to pick up this edge and bring it forward to the front. Something like that. And then I'll just flip all of my faces. One day I will come back with a definitive guide as to how to know if that's going to happen, but I haven't worked it out yet. Okay, and let's just going to, that was the right button. It's just to add a little bit of extra detail in to make it a bit more interesting. Because especially with chrome objects, you don't really get a reflection if it's completely uniform. So I've made this kind of like aerial detail, and we're just gonna, and again, we don't need to do this, but let's quarter it off whilst we can. There we go. And we should be able to apply a subdivision surface. We just need a loop cut there. And then we're going to duplicate this, and it's going to go through the other hole. So let's select this edge, cursor to selected, Shift D, and then selections cursor. And can you see the mistake that I've made entirely on purpose? I worked the whole way around. So object mirror, and then we'll just slide these back so it shouldn't make any difference. And then if we want these disappearing off camera, we're just going to make sure we've got X-ray rows selected, and we can set both of these at the same time. So these edges, there we go. So just the materials to put on. You know how to make a material, right? Let's make it a black. Bring our roughness up quite a bit. And we're just going to link that material. And then these, we're going to make a new chrome. So fully metallic. So roughness to about there. I think the only thing that I would do to finish this off is to swap this colour and use environment texture. So I've got a bunch already, and that's giving us some nice like highlights and reflections now. We just need to set this to transparent. And we should be good. Let's turn off face orientation. Turn on our plane. Check everything's looking okay. That grey's not right, but yeah, close enough for this tutorial. I think I'm just going to pick this up very slightly up. And then you have the final render. So hopefully this didn't melt your head too much. And it made sense, and you could see that there's different ways of tackling these problems, and they're never perfect, but it's about what works for the job. And yeah, looking forward to getting into some more of this with you soon. Thanks for watching.